one of the questions that new students ask me in regard to studying the art of ninjutsu is, what book should I buy to help me study ninjutsu? And that's a very good question. There are lots of books out there. I've got a huge library. I've been studying this martial arts since about 1985 when I started. And over that years, I've built up a huge collection. There's a lot of books out there. Which one is the best to buy? And so what I thought I'd do, because I looked on the internet and I tried to find other book reviews. There's a lot of book reviews of people reviewing their own books, and obviously giving a very positive review of their own books. But there's no one really out there doing book reviews on books of ninjutsu. And so I thought, well, why not? I'll include that as part of my channel. I will do regular book reviews, maybe one a week, reviewing a book that I've got in my library. And not just book reviews on ninjutsu, but maybe things like esoteric Buddhism, Shugendo, the strategy and tactics of the Japanese warrior, history of the samurai and the ninja, etc., etc. Anything associated with the art of ninjutsu or the arts of medieval Japanese martial arts. So I thought to myself, okay, so I'm going to do some reviews. What book should I start with? And I looked along my library and I thought, which one? And then I thought to myself, why not do a review on the first book that I ever bought? So a little bit of a story. So, as I say, I started studying ninjutsu in 1985. I'd heard about the art in about 1982, 83 through watching the ninja movies, Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, and that, and those, obviously now we know those films were just guys in karate suits doing karate, right, pretending to be ninja. But at the time I didn't know that because I was like 17, 18 years of age. So that's all I knew about ninjutsu, to be honest. I'd done boxing, judo, karate, kung fu, not all at the same time. As a youth, I became a bit disenchanted in martial arts, to be honest, because I just found they were punching, kicking, throwing, and a lot of ego involved in there, which wasn't for me. I was more interested in the philosophy and having martial arts as a way of life. But I was a massive Bruce Lee fan. I loved the Bruce Lee movies. I think Bruce Lee was a fantastic martial artist, but I loved his philosophy too. His book, The Tao Jeet Kune Do, I just think it's just an incredible book. Full of philosophy, it kind of gelled me. So I used to live in a town called Kettering, and it was a very small market town. I used to get on a bus and I used to travel over to Northampton, about 16 miles away, and go into a local martial arts shop and pick up my Bruce Lee books. So when a new Bruce Lee book came out, I'd be in and buy it. And this one day I went into the store. I got the books. I went to the counter and I bought the Bruce Lee books. I went to walk out the door, and I happened to glance to my right, and there was a book in the other books on this bookshelf. They were kind of face towards me. This purple book, and it kind of like stood out from the rest. And I stopped, and I walked over and I picked this book up and opened this book, and it wasn't kind of what I expected. There was people doing armed combat and throws and chokes and strikes, etc. But there's also pictures of people with knives, so doing knife defense or using a knife against someone else with a knife. And there was short staff in there, there was long staff, there was sword, there was flexible weapons. But besides that, there was some strategy and history, and there was some finger positions, which we now know to be Kuji Goshin Ho in the back, and there was different postures, and I thought, this is interesting, a bit different. So I went to the counter, bought it, took it home, and read it. And that book changed my life. It set me out on a path that I've been following now for 40 years. And that book was Warrior Ways of Enlightenment by Stephen K. Hayes. Now, I don't have a copy of the original book I bought. The original book, as I said, had a purple cover, and I think years later they changed the covers of those books. And in fact, I think I've got some just above me here. You can see at the top here, there's a couple of the new covers that came out on those books. I don't have that book anymore. But the Warrior Ways of Enlightenment was the second book in the series. There was a book one, I think it's called Spirit of the Shadow Warrior. There was a book 3 and a book 4, and they came out subsequently, of course. And as they came out, I bought them. And in the 80s and early 90s, you know, we're talking about a time when there was no internet, there was no Google or Wikipedia, there was no YouTube or Facebook. The only way to get information was through buying books or the odd magazine article, maybe with an article of ninjutsu in it. Certainly not the movies, because that was just karate, you know, guys in ninja suits doing karate. So the only way to get any information about ninjutsu back in the early 80s in the UK was through books or the odd magazine. I think the martial arts seminars started around about 84 in the UK. I did one in November 85 with, I think the teacher was a guy called David Koss, who was a student of Stephen K. Hayes. So the only way to get information in was buy a book. And I wish people would buy more books, to be honest, but that's a different subject. Most people now get all their information from YouTube, which is probably not so good, or Wikipedia. So anyway, yeah, I don't have a copy of the original book. I must have given it away or lost it or whatever years ago. But today it's available in an entire volume. This is all six volumes of Stephen K. Hayes' O'Hara series, book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, including Warrior and Enlightenment, which was the first book I ever read. And this volume includes so much stuff. I mean, there is strategy and tactics and history. There's examples of fighting, unarmed combat and short staff, long staff, flexible weapons, firearms defenses, Gotompo, escape and evasion, Intonjutsu, invisibility and silent movement. As I say, it's really full of so much stuff that I think for a beginner, it's the place to start. If for me 40 years ago, when I knew nothing about ninjutsu, this was so helpful. I think for a beginner today, this book again would be so helpful. It would put them on the path. Yes, they can read other books later on, but I think this is just something you need to have on your bookshelf. Yeah, people today will say, well, there's some mistakes in it. Okay, so Stephen Hayes, when he wrote that book, was a new student. He was one of the only Western people studying this art, right? So maybe, yes, there's a few mistakes. It's not huge mistakes at all. And maybe there's a few things in there we might re-look at today, but I don't think there's any mistakes in there really. People might say, well, it doesn't reflect what we're doing today. It doesn't reflect what we're doing in the Bujinkan. It doesn't reflect what we're doing in the Genbakan. Well, that's fine. But this book was written 45 years ago, nearly half a century. Things have changed, things have moved on. But it doesn't mean that the art of ninjutsu isn't encapsulated in his book. I think it is. I think this is one of the books that encapsulates the history, the philosophy, the psychology, and the tactics, strategies, and fighting techniques of the ninja. And I think it should be on everybody's bookshelf. It's a very short review, but I think, as a beginner, go out and buy this book, read it, regardless of what your teacher might say. Regardless that your teacher might say, oh, you need to buy this book by Hatsumi Sensei, you need to buy this. Fine, buy that book too, but I still say 40 years ago, when I knew anything about ninjutsu, this book was a real help. And I think for anybody who doesn't know anything about ninjutsu today, this book is going to be a real help. Hope you enjoyed the review. I'll do another review next week. We'll look at another book. And stay tuned. Please subscribe to my channel and have a good read. Thank you.